Well, that definitely was one heck of a semifinal weekend. And that game, especially that West semifinal, will be a classic to what we talked about for years to come. However, it definitely sucks to be on the wrong end of it. But I am still here to preview the West Final of the 2021 CFL playoffs. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I already made my preview for the Eastern Final with the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Toronto Argonauts. So now this is my fourth of 5 video for the On the Road to the Grey Cup, as now we are shifting over to the Western Final. And guess if you gave my tone and already saw the title, we are going to have a Prairie matchup for the third season in a row as the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They successfully defeated the Calgary Stampeders 33-30 in overtime. Definitely will be going down as a classic for years to come. As you know, the Calgary Stampeders went on the road to Regina and wasn't the prettiest game for both sides, but ultimately Saskatchewan won it in Saskatchewan. So now it's the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They are heading east to take on their other heated rival, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. As the Western Final will have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting the Saskatchewan Roughriders. This game will be on Sunday, December 5th, and it will be a 2 p.m. Mountain kickoff at IG Field, or 4 p.m. Eastern or 3 p.m. Central, depending on where you are. So I've teed it up. So before I bring up my notes, and let's break down the Western Final, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey. Home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders. Just make sure you hit like and subscribe. I also have my other social links down in the description below, and I also have my Brett Hornby Shorts second channel where I exclusively put my short form content on there. So appreciate like and subscribe both here and on my second channel as well. So let's bring up my notes and let's break down and recap the semifinal as well as the teeing up the Western Final. As I mentioned, the Western Final will have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So what happened in the West semifinal? Well, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, they beat the Calgary Stampeders 33-30 in overtime. Definitely was a very interesting game. Definitely was very hard on the nerves, and ultimately, as a Calgary Stampeder fan, left me heartbroken. But if we look at the numbers in this game, there were some very, very, very interesting numbers on both sides that kind of sort of tells the story on some parts, and other times it doesn't. So for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, well, Cody Fajardo, the quarterback, he was 22 for 33. He threw for 189 yards. He threw for 1 touchdown, but 4 interceptions. Yes, Cody Fajardo threw 4 interceptions. However, he also was the leading rusher for the Saskatchewan Roughriders as he ran for 89 yards on 10 carries, including a touchdown himself. And then William Powell, the running back for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, on 18 carries he had 73 yards. And then the lead receiver for the Saskatchewan Roughriders was recently picked up, Duke Williams. He had 5 catches for 55 yards, and he had a couple of catches in the fourth quarter. Another player that definitely stood out for the Saskatchewan Roughriders that maybe could swing things their way in this matchup is Jamel Morrow. He had 1 touchdown punt return in the second quarter, and he also had looked like a missed field goal return for a touchdown, but was called back on a illegal block. And then Ed Gainey, he had 2 interceptions for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So definitely were numbers all over the place when it comes to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Well, the Calgary Stampeders, well, Bo Levi Mitchell, he was 26 for 36 in passing. He threw for 285 yards. He did not throw any touchdowns, but he threw 2 interceptions. Carey, he definitely had a great game on the ground for Calgary. He, in 22 carries, he had 117 yards and 2 touchdowns. Leading receiver was Reggie Bagleton. He had 5 catches for 105 yards. But big story for Calgary is that Rene Paredes, he was 5 for 8 on field goals, and he struggled with field goals, including missing one in overtime that opened the door for Saskatchewan to kick the winning field goal, which they did. And then Jonathan Moxey, he wound up at Guinea with 3 interceptions, so, and all that in the first half. So numbers all over the place for both sides. Big number was both teams had 4 turnovers each. So it was a pretty game, especially in the first half. If you were a big fan of defense, maybe it was a great game. But definitely had the drama back and forth. Needed overtime and needed a second mini game to settle who was going to Winnipeg. And to my chagrin and my heart broken, it's going to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So gotta accept the fact that it's Winnipeg and Saskatchewan that I'm previewing for the Western Final, not Winnipeg and Calgary. So now let's take a look at the team records, shall we? As the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they were the best team not only in the West Division but in the CFL altogether, as they finished first with 11-3 for first in the West. They were a perfect 7-0 at home, so definitely will come in handy for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And they were 8-1 versus the West, so those numbers are definitely intriguing. The only loss for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers against the West was against the Calgary Stampeders in the last week when both sides were resting their players. Now when it comes to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, well, they finished second in the West, which is why they hosted the Western Semifinal against the Calgary Stampeders. They were 4-3 on the road, so they were a little better at home than they are on the road, and they were 5-4 against the West. So definitely you could probably say this could be a mismatch on paper with these two provincial rivals. Maybe even more so when we look at the season series, as they only played each other twice, and it was the Classic, Labor Day Classic, and the Banjo Bowl. So if we go back to Week 5 on Sunday, September the 5th, as I meant to say, as it was the Labor Day Classic, the Labor Day Sunday game, where Saskatchewan hosted it. And usually it goes to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but this year it went to the Blue Bombers big time, as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers won the Labor Day Classic, the Labor Day Sunday game, 23-8. And then the next week, the Banjo Bowl, as the scene shifts to Winnipeg for Week 6. This happened on Saturday, September 11th. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers won that game even more convincingly, 33-9 in Winnipeg. So if you add up the scores, Winnipeg outscored Saskatchewan 56-17. Some people say, well, you can't look at the season series, but I think when you look at this matchup, I think this could be a mismatch, but that doesn't mean anything can happen. But I'm going to say if Winnipeg wins, it'll be as expected, but if Saskatchewan wins, it would actually be considered a massive upset, I would say. So before we break down who has the edge, let's take a look at the playoff history, shall we? So this is the 3rd year in a row that both Winnipeg and Saskatchewan are going to play each other in the Grey Cup, or Grey Cup playoffs, to get to the Grey Cup or the next round. So last year, these two teams played each other in the Western Final. This was on Sunday, November 17th, as Regina, Saskatchewan, was hosting the West Semifinal, or the Western Final, as I meant to say, as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They won that one 20-13, as Winnipeg won that game to go to the Grey Cup last year or 2 years ago in Calgary. That game definitely was a defensive struggle. Of course, people remember the Cody Fajardo throwing it off the upright at late in the game when Saskatchewan was trying to tie it up. So the West Final in 2019 went to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers when they won that one in Saskatchewan. In 2018, these two teams met each other in the Western Semifinal for the right to move on to play the Calgary Stampeders in the Western Final in 2018. And that game was another close one. This one was closer. Well, this happened on Sunday, November 11th, as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they defeated the Saskatchewan Roughriders. This was in Saskatchewan, 23-18, and I remember that one being that the running game, Andrew Harris wore down the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And then the last time they played each other before that, because I looked back at the last 3 games, it actually was the 2007 Grey Cup, as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at the time represented the East because Ottawa wasn't in the league. This was the 95th Grey Cup in Toronto, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders won that one 23-19, as Saskatchewan won their first Grey Cup then for the first time since 1989. So if you look at the playoff history, we definitely have some close games. But the season series says otherwise. But playoff history, I mean, the last 2 games are fairly recent. Just to add that 3rd game in, it was the Grey Cup in 2007. So I also look at the last playoff win for each team. Well, Saskatchewan's last playoff win obviously was last week against the Calgary Stampeders. Well, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers' last playoff game win was, and last playoff game, I should also say, was the 2019 Grey Cup right here in Calgary, the 107th Grey Cup. That happened on Sunday, November 24th. Well, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they were hosting the Grey Cup as they defeated the Hamilton Tiger Cats 33-12, and potentially we could have that matchup again in 2021. You can take a look at my East Final preview video on who I think won that one in my confidence. But now let's take a look at who's got the edge, and I'm going to probably say not necessarily much of a spoiler alert. I think there's going to be a lot of me saying Winnipeg, because this matchup definitely favors Winnipeg heavily. Starting with the quarterback, well, you got Zach Claros, who is the most outstanding player nominee for the West Division, versus Cody Fajardo, and I'm going to say all season. Zach Claros definitely has been one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and since he's gone to Winnipeg. Finally, he started off in Saskatchewan in 2019 and got injured and got shipped to Toronto and then got shipped to Winnipeg and then led them to their Grey Cup win in 2019. Well, this one easily will go to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Running back, hands down, Winnipeg. This is the biggest mismatch on here. We don't know if Andrew Harris is going to play in this game, but Johnny Augustine and Brady Oliveira. So Winnipeg has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the running game. I mean, Saskatchewan does have William Powell and Cody Fajardo, but this is definitely a mismatch. Winnipeg, hands down, has the edge in that matchup. So now if you go to the receivers, this will be a pretty good matchup, I'd say, for both sides. I mean, you got Shaq Bailey, Duke Evans with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, as well as Brandon Lunius, Kieran Schaefer-Baker. However, Winnipeg, they got Kenny Lawler, who is definitely their big play receiver. I'm definitely going to say, just as a group, when it comes to the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I'm thinking the Winnipeg Blue Bombers has the edge when it comes to receiver, especially led by Kenny Lawler, but a few other players could definitely pick up the slack when it comes to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, like Rasheed Bailey as well. So now if you go to the offensive line, this definitely also will go to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I mean, they got Logan Ferlin, Dan Clark, Evan Johnson, but Stanley Bryant definitely is the anchor when it comes to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. A big part of why their running game is so successful, and Zach Claros. So Winnipeg definitely has the edge in that. So the offense definitely all will go to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, especially when it comes to their running game. That's definitely their strength and their quarterback as well. So now let's look on the defensive side of the ball, and maybe this one could swing the matchup a little favor to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I mean, obviously they got Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat for the linebackers. However, Saskatchewan also has Jonathan Woodward and A.C. Leonard, maybe Micah Johnson as well. This is actually a good matchup, and I actually agree, as I look on the CFL.ca website as well. That's a push. I like this matchup on the defensive line, their first level of defense. So now it comes to the linebackers. I also do like this matchup where you got Dion Lacey when it comes to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and then Larry Dean had an injury. However, there's definitely the big man is Adam Bighill, or Dion Lacey and Larry Dean were Saskatchewan, but Adam Bighill is definitely the key player in the linebackers, so I'm going to give this one to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now when it comes to defensive backs, well, I like this matchup as well. I mean, Saskatchewan has Ed Gainey and Cameron Marshall. However, let's not forget Brandon Alexander, Dietrich Nichols, and DeAndre Alford for Winnipeg, as well as Winston Rose. I think Winnipeg definitely has more talent in there, so when it comes to defensive backs, I'm going to give that one to Winnipeg. So the defense, I'm going to say, is a little closer in this matchup compared to the offense, but I think Winnipeg in most categories. So now if you go to special teams, well, this one definitely is interesting, as the big threat that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have is in Janarian Grant. However, he battled some injuries and hasn't broken one out yet. However, Jamal Morrow definitely made a name for himself last week when it comes to the Western Semifinal against the Calgary Stampeders, where he did return a punt return for a touchdown and he had a missed field goal. He did return it for a touchdown, but was called back on a legal block. However, Janarian Grant, I think, definitely will bring some edge to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So in this one, I'll give the slight edge to Winnipeg just because Jamal Morrow last week made a name for himself and his stock risen. But Janarian Grant, if he gets going, I like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers a lot more. Now kicking. Well, Winnipeg had some struggles with finding a kicker. They seem to have settled on Sergio Castillo, as they also went through Ty Kerpinga and Mark Leggio and Al Murtada. However, I like the Saskatchewan Roughriders in this one when it comes to Brett Lawler, especially last week when he made that winning field goal when it matters the most. So this will be the only part of the game that I would give it to the Saskatchewan Roughriders with confidence, is the kicking game. So if this happens to be a close game and it comes down to a kick, I like Saskatchewan this one. So that's breaking down the facets of the game. So now this is a part of the episode or the video, as I put this team will win if. With Saskatchewan in a row, let's start off with Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan will win if Cody Fajardo forgets the interceptions that he threw last week. There's no effing way that he'll win again this week if he threw for 4 interceptions. It won't happen again. Cody Fajardo has to realize he got lucky in how the game played out. He threw for 4 interceptions, but he showed some poise in that fourth quarter drive. So if he can forget those interceptions that he threw last week, I think they have a chance. Saskatchewan will win if William Powell and Cody Fajardo has a two-pronged attack, kind of beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in their own game. That was a big part of also why the Saskatchewan Roughriders beat the Calgary Stampeders last week, as both William Powell and Cody Fajardo's running yardage was greater than Kadeen Carey's alone. So if they can really do a two-pronged attack to beat Winnipeg in their own game, I think Winnipeg or Saskatchewan could pull off the upset against Winnipeg. And I'm going to say big special teams play again. If Jamal Morrow did what he did last week again, I think Saskatchewan would be primed to pull off the upset. So if we look at the Winnipeg side of the ball, well, Winnipeg will win if Zach Collaros can keep doing his thing. If he keeps showing the MLP form that he has shown since he's become a Winnipeg Blue Bomber, I think Winnipeg will win this one easily. Winnipeg will win if their rushing game really comes to play. If we look at the weather forecast, this could definitely be a big swing for Winnipeg. And Winnipeg will win if the home field advantage continues. Saskatchewan won't have their home field advantage in this game, as they're going to be going in hostile territory now. As someone who cheers for the Stampeders, I've been to games all West cities. Saskatchewan has the best home field advantage on the line, but Winnipeg is second. I put Winnipeg and Saskatchewan ahead of Edmonton. So it's going to be a hostile territory for Saskatchewan in this one after they enjoyed their home field advantage. And we're hearing that over 28,000 tickets have been sold for this game, so we'll see what happens. So the weather forecast. Well, it's December. It's in Winnipeg, and it definitely looks like it's going to feel like it, which I'm going to say weather could be a factor and might give the running game more of a prominence, and I think that'll definitely favor the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, as they're forecasting periods of snow and a high of -10. But the game won't start till after 3 o'clock in Winnipeg, and they're saying it's going to be clear and a low of -25, so I guess you're going to have to really bundle up if you're going to this game, which definitely is going to say who's going to be able to battle the cold the best, as the games were fairly nice in the West going up to now, but definitely is going to be a Winnipeg-like game in December. I guess it's December after all. So the last part of this video, my pick and my confidence. So here's my smart bulb again, as I have it set to daylight for the neutral color. So if I pick the Saskatchewan Roughriders, I would have it green. Or if I pick the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, it will be blue. So who do I have winning the Western Final to be going to Hamilton? Who is it going to be? Well, I think based on how I broke down the matchup and how I feel about this one, if Winnipeg is going to play to their full bellies and the fact that it's at home in Winnipeg, I got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers winning, and I'm going to give them 80% confidence. That's how confident I am that I think Winnipeg is going to win this one and move on to the 108th Grey Cup and go back to the Grey Cup to defend their title. Winnipeg, for most of the season, I mean the last 2 games, they were resting a lot of stars. They've been in another league compared to everybody else. I mean, the running game, Zach Caleros, I mean, they're not even too sure if Andrew Harrison's going to play. But they still, excuse me, it's the running attack, the receivers, the defense. Winnipeg, they're stacked from top to bottom, and they're definitely a much better team they are last year when they won the Grey Cup. I mean, not to say that Saskatchewan is capable of pulling off the upset, but I'm going to say based on the season series, how Saskatchewan looked last week at home, if they do that again in Winnipeg, it's going to be ugly. But I have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers winning this war with 8% confident, and if the Calgary Stampeders fan, be honest with you, I wouldn't be too sad. I mean, it's one of my biggest rival team, but I'm still looking forward to seeing how the defense plays out, and if it's going to be that Arctic weather that they're forecasting. It's definitely going to be fun to see. But who do you have winning the Western Final against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Saskatchewan Roughriders? Who's going to be Hamilton bound in this one? And as I say, take a look at my Eastern Final preview, who I think is going to join potentially the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Hamilton, between the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Toronto Argonauts. So anyways, I'd like to say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of Flames, Hippen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my channel, recapping game stories, and yeah, I'm definitely still hurting from that loss last week in the West Semifinal, but I'm a CFL fan. I'm still going to enjoy, the games upcoming, and of course the Grey Cup itself, whoever happens to be there. So next week I'll be previewing the Grey Cup, whoever happens to be the 2 teams that come out in the Final 4. But I also do a variety of non-sports kind of personal blogs, attempt to comedy, and do share my experience them on the road or a sport event, and I've done some vlogging on the go. And I have my social media links down in the description below. As well, I have my Brett Hornby Shorts second channel where I exclusively put my short form content on there. So stay tuned, as after the games, the East and West Final, I will do a post-game short on there, recapping who won and who stood out if anything bizarre happens in one of these games. And with this both being heated rivalry games, always something bizarre happens, as I shall say. So I just want to say enjoy the playoffs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And who do you have going to Hamilton in this matchup? And then who do you have going to Hamilton from the East Final as well? So I'll see you then.